हेलो एवरीवन। जैसे कि मैंने पिछले वीडियो में कहा था that the next video is going to be about pawn attacks. So guys, this video is all about when to launch a pawn attack, how to launch a pawn attack, and why are the pawns very useful. So guys, first things first, when do you do a pawn attack and when is the pawn attack very useful? In this position you can see pawn attack is as equally good as attacking with the pieces, especially when the king is safe and it has a good pawn structure in front of it. So in this position it is right to move, and you can see that the black king is safe. It has a good pawn structure and everything looks good. So in positions like this, what your main aim is going to be push your pawns, blast open the king side, and that is the most important. You know what, you have to break your opponent's defense. You have to deflect, or you can say attack the pawns that is defending the king. So over here, this is not a puzzle actually, this is just a position that I have set up to explain you when and how pawn attacks can be useful. For example, in this position you can already go g4, and here if you're playing white, your main idea should be to push the pawns g4, h4, g5, attack this. Now for example, let's say black plays a random move like rook to e8, and now you can start pushing your pawn to h4. And the idea is that now whatever white plays, let's say he plays a move like a5, you already start pushing g5, you attack the black king, you put this you attack its pieces, this pawn will now take it, you open the h file, and you are already winning. For example, if he moves the knight somewhere, there is no good squares for the knight, to be honest. Knight h7 is the only square, and you can already play g6 because this pawn is pinned and you're going to win. So coming back to the initial position over here, when are pawn attacks helpful? Pawn attacks are helpful when, or I can say they're as good as attacking with the pieces, or it's as equal as using the pieces, especially when the opponent king is safe and it is solidly behind a good pawn structure. So in positions like this, it is often it's often helpful that you push your pawns ahead, you march your pawns ahead, g4, h4, g5, you breach your opponent's king, you attack, and you win the game. So guys, moving to the next puzzle. Here it is black to move. I would request you to pause the video and try to come up with the best pawn attack that you can see in this position. Well, if you saw the move pawn to d5, it's a good move. You know what, you are pushing the pawn to d5, and you are saying that after exchanging you have control of the center. It is definitely a good move, but what is your idea over here? D5 is a good logic, but in this position black actually has a better move. Black can actually play the pawn to f5, hitting the knight. Now the knight cannot go to d2, because if you go knight to d2, then black can simply play f4 and the bishop is lost. So in this position, white would play the knight to c3, and now you already move the pawn to f4, and after a bishop move to d2, you can already play pawn to f3. So guys, you saw how we just raced ahead with our pawns. f5, f4, and sorry, yeah, f5, then we have to go knight to c3, f5, f4, and already f3 on the board. And after white takes it, now you can see the king is open, the king is exposed, and now you already have ideas like, let's say, knight to h4, and the g file is open, the king is exposed. Your pieces are going to come into the game very soon, and you're going to win this position very easily. So what we learned over here is that you push the pawns and you completely destroy the opponent's king side. Like we saw in this position, we push the pawn to f5, f4, f3, and you know what, in the process we destroyed his king, we destroyed his structure, and we attack and we win the game. So as I said, pawn moves, especially in structures like this, when the king was solid, I mean, you look at the initial position, the white king looks safe, he has an army of pawns in front of it, and it's looking solid. So in these positions, attacking with the pawn is as equally good as attacking with the pieces. So instead of, let's say, going knight h4 first, or okay, of course knight f4 is a blunder, but if you think of just putting your pieces in the attack, it's not the best idea, because the white king looks safe. So you immediately start pushing with your pawns and you win the game, as we showed that you just push your pawns and you win the game. Moving on to the next position, this is black to move. Now my question to you is, of course, in this position, you have you're staring at your opponent's king, your rooks are active. Which pawn do you push? Do pause the video and try this. Now, if you came up with the move pawn to g4, well, this is not the best way to continue, because now your idea is, of course, to push the pawn to h4 as well. But now the knight comes to h4. Yes, the knight is in the no, the knight is in the corner, and yes, your pieces are still good. Your bishops are good, your rook is good, but your final objective is not achieved. So in this position, the best move for black is actually to push the pawn to h4. And now the idea is very simple. You know what? If white takes, this is already winning for black, because the g file is open, and you know what? White is going to crumble very soon. But what is the idea of h4? The idea is very simple. You want to take on the pawn on g3. You want to open up the h file. The queen will come to h7, and you're going to launch a crazy attack, and you're going to win very soon. So it is very important that what I want to show you is that it is very important to calculate which pawn to push. Very often, in these positions, you just want to push the pawn to g4, attack the knight, thinking that okay, if the knight goes somewhere back, now I go to h4 and I win the game. But you also have to see what is the defense that your opponent has. Now, if you push the pawn to g4, white can actually put his knight on h4, stopping your move. He's preventing your idea of pushing the pawn to h4. So many times, as we have already discussed in the previous videos, it is important to prevent the defense. So here, while when you go g4, white's defense is by putting the pawn on h4. So you immediately push the pawn to h4, and now you're going to have a very good position, because yes, your bishop is opened. You're going to open up one of the files, either the g file or the h file, and you're going to launch a massive attack which your opponent will not be able to defend. So guys, coming to the final position of this video, it is white to move. And of course, you know what, black's king is here in the queen side. Both your pawns are here. You can push both the pawns. Like nothing is stopping you from pushing either of the pawns. Now my question to you is, which pawn would you push and why? Now over here, if you thought of the move pawn to a4, well, this is not the best move, because then black can immediately play the move bishop to b4, and your objective is again not achieved. Okay, this is not a permanent defender of the b4 square, but over here you also have to see one thing. If you thought that after the bishop comes to b4 I can play a move like bishop c5, well, this is where you are wrong, because you have missed this small tactic. And do pause the video and try to find the best move for black over here, because when you push the pawn to b4, when you push your bishop to c5, now the problem is that this is now not defended. So now black can just take the bishop, and after you take it, black has this move pawn to d4. He's attacking your knight, and there's also a nasty checkmate threatened on g2. So that is why pawn to b4, pawn to a4 is not the best idea. The correct move over here is pawn to b4. Now your idea is very simple. You want to go a4, b5, and you want to blast open the king side. So over here, black's only move is to go queen e8. Now if he goes b5 over here, this is already bad, because now the pawns in front of the king is, there are no pawns. I mean, he's just pushed his pawn. The c file is weak. The bishop on c6 is going to be weak, and you already sense that white is going to win this position easily. So the more logical move is to play the move queen to e8. Now over here, if you thought that you have some ideas of queen c2, a4, b5, yes, these are good ideas, but as we have been seeing in attacks, one of the most important thing is activity and how fast you are with the attack. You cannot often become too slow. So over here, actually, as white, you can already go with the pawn to a4, because now you are threatening b5, and now black can just take this pawn, which he will take. And now the point is, you can already play the pawn to b5. Now let us understand what is the way to continue. Let's say if black takes the pawn with the bishop, you take the bishop, and after he takes the knight, you already have this move queen to a2. Now you are threatening queen a7 check. The rook is going to come to c1, and you are going to win the game. Now what happens if he takes it with the pawn? Well, if he takes it with the pawn, you take the bishop, and after pawn takes, you have the open b5. And guys, here we have already done the video on sacrifices. So pause the video and see if you have a sacrifice. In this position, if you found the move rook takes b7, you can give yourselves a pat on the back, because this is absolutely the correct move. Because if you have learned sacrifices, you know that this is going to win you the game. Because after king takes b7, now you have the move queen to b2 check. If you found this is great. And no matter where the king goes, he's going to get checkmated. For example, if he goes king to a6, there is directly queen b6 checkmate. And if he goes king to let's say a8, well, then in this position you already have queen to b6. You are threatening a mate in one. And yes, you black can stop it. No, like it doesn't matter how he stops it. For example, if he comes rook to d7 over here, you can actually play the move queen to a6 check. The rook cannot block it because of a checkmate. So the king comes here, and now what do? You get the last piece into the attack, that is the rook, and now checkmate follows. The king only has one square, and if he goes here, queen b7 is a checkmate. So and the same thing happens with even queen to e7. You know, like let me quickly show it to you. If you come queen to e7, you know what? This is also just completely losing, because you can actually give this check. After king b8, you get the rook here, and the same checkmate follows, and you're completely winning. And now, okay, again, if he goes king c6, this is again a mate, because you have queen b6 and queen b7, which is a checkmate. And if he goes anywhere else, for example, king to c7, the idea is same. And if he goes here, you can already just there are many ways to checkmate. You can get the rook into the attack, and this is also going to be a mate very soon, because now he has to get the queen, and if he comes here, queen b7 is a checkmate. So guys, over here, coming back to the starting position, it is important to calculate the pawn attacks, the pawn pushes that you have very carefully. And what we learned in this video is that you should know when to push the pawns and why to push the pawns. And when you launch a pawn attack, mainly when the king is safe and he has a solid pawn structure in front of it, the black king looks safe, but you know what, your pawns are as equally good as your pieces. You start with b4. The idea is that you want to push the pawn to b5 and you want to weaken the opponent king. He goes queen e8, stopping b5, but you don't play a move like queen c2, a slow move. You go for activity. You want to play fast. You push the pawn to a4, and if he takes the pawn on a4, we have seen a beautiful sacrifice also, guys. We have seen, you have learned how to sacrificing at the right moment, and sacrificing effectively is important, what we have learned. And this is what we showed in this, that no matter where the king goes, a checkmate is soon going to follow. So guys, with this we come to the end of pawn pushes, and when to push the pawn, why to push the pawns in the attack. I hope this video was helpful. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe the channel. And guys, stay tuned, because in the upcoming videos we are going to see how to attack when both the sides have castled, same as well as opposite side castling. We'll start with opposite side castling, and then we'll move to same side castling. If you're enjoying this series, do let me know in the comments, and do let me know what else you want to learn, because we are happy to contribute to your learning. Happy learning, guys. Thank you.